Man, I love it when a good plan comes together. Yes, 76ers now on an 8-game losing streak. And as things start to play out with now 7 games remaining for your home team, we have a lot of interesting things to talk about, including tonight's basketball game. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers Postgame Show presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. With Rich Hoffman, I'm Devon Givens, Bree producing, all of you in the chat, and man, right away, Luka Doncic, our Pelicans, Philly Sheriff, race to the bottom, and Seth F., a masterpiece. All of you are correct because as right before we came on the air, I said to Bree and Rich, why stop at 5? Keep it going to 4, so we'll talk about the tank watch that, you know, we're already ready to go. I hope you all are as well, wearing your fatigues or your hats, whatever you're doing at home. We'll get the tank watch, prospect watch, our daily tankathon spin a little bit later from Rich. We'll check in with the guys from the arena. Huge win, as Agavini says. Yes, because, Rich, it's a big loss, but in all caps, it's a big win.
You ever seen, I shouldn't say have you ever seen, you've definitely seen White Men Can't Jump.
Well, 100%.
The scene where Rosie Perez is on the bus and she's telling Woody Harrelson, sometimes when you lose, you really win.
Yes.
And sometimes when you win, you really lose. That was that situation tonight. Yeah. So
Played out perfectly.
Devon, that, I mean, look, we thought that this would be a tanking battle for the ages. And the real answer here is that the Sixers, you can't mess with this tank. Their defense is so bad. So, Devon, I did the stats. I just looked on Basketball Reference, and I wanted to look up after seeing R.J. Barrett make like his 4th 3 of the night. I was wondering, I don't know if he had 4 threes, but they had a ton of threes, Toronto. They shot 17 of 38 from beyond the arc. They're all wide open. I wanted to see, like, what's the last little bit of this schedule been like for the Sixers, particularly when it comes to opponent three-point shooting percentage. If you include this performance by Toronto, in their last 10 games, Sixers opponents are shooting 188 of 450 from beyond the arc, and that comes out to 42% from deep.
How many games is that?
10.
Damn.
That's
some epic tanking right there, boy.
Man,
that's not even on purpose.
If you give up
you can't even
42% shooting from beyond the arc every night, that's the average night. You're in a good spot because it really doesn't matter how well Lonnie Walker plays offensively, and Lonnie Walker did play well offensively tonight. And Bona tonight also played pretty well. It's just their team defense is dragging them so far back, particularly with the transition. I looked midway through the third quarter as well. I think 25% of the Raptors' offense was in transition. That's just way too high of a number if you're actually trying to win the game. So it's like we said last night, man, this team's team defense is what is driving the tank more than anything. It's consistently pretty bad every night. These guys don't know where to go. They don't know which guy should get back on defense, how they should help. And, you know, it's to be expected, I would say, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's really bad, man. And it's funny because as you say that, Rich, you were saying, we always bring you guys into the office, into the studio as we're talking about this. And Rich says, oh, yeah, look at this zone that they're playing. Look at this defense that they're playing. And it's inevitable that the opposing team just starts to knock down their perimeter shots because of what Rich is like. Look at this defense. And to their credit,
they deserve credit. I mean, some of these teams are probably shooting a little over their heads on these shots, but they are wide open.
Yeah, they are really wide. They're really, really good looks. If you're a player like them, you want to play the Sixers every night because these guys like Cole Swinner on a 10-day contract. Yeah. See what I did? You want to play them every night that you play because of what the defense is and how good of the look you get and the shots are falling, you get into a good rhythm. And I do want to say this too, because we always say it. I don't think we have to say this for every game before the season ends, and I'm sure we'll say it in the offseason, but it has nothing to do with Jared Butler and Justin Edwards and Marcus Bagley and Wheeler. It has nothing to do with them. It's not their fault. They're out there because at this point, they have to. It's by default, if you will. So as we say, and jokingly talking about it last night with Derek, and before Derek came on and he asked Derek about it, but Rich bringing it up, is it possible that they can lose 15 games in a row? Because these are the players that are out there on the floor. So again, we're not picking at these players, specifically picking at these players. We are just simply talking about the fact that they are now currently on an 8-game losing streak at the right time, with all due respect to the players that are out there busting their tails, trying to earn a spot in the NBA, put some good film out there, at least get a summer league invite, and maybe a two-way, and as the free agent thing plays along in the summer. But man, 10 games and the teams are shooting close to 43% from behind the three-point line against a professional basketball team. These are the things that we laugh at from afar over the last 7-8 years when we look at Charlotte, Washington. Those two teams, you start with them always, of how bad and how poor those teams are, how poorly they play. But now we're in this spot where the 76ers are that bad for Rich to do the research of what the opposition is shooting against the 76ers, because they have been that bad.
We've been sitting on that couch over there, and I'm just watching more and more people make threes. Doesn't matter who they are. You brought up Swider. If you were a team looking to tank against the Sixers, don't sign a shooter to a 10-day contract, because that guy's going to get easy looks against this team. Yeah, man, it's been, I mean, look, they're giving up 19 threes a night, man. And on a very high percentage, you're just going to end up losing a lot of those games. And you're right. Like, I do not want to hammer any individual player because it is a collective issue, and it is because the Sixers have not had any time to really practice and have these guys. I mean, they're young, so they don't really understand the intricacies of NBA defense. But there is a reason that in training camp, teams go over their principles. They start at the very bottom and they say, okay, here's what we are doing on a drive and kick. Here is how we're going to defend the pick and roll. Here is what we're going to do in transition. Here's when we're going to send 3 guys to the glass and 2 guys to the glass. These guys don't have any of that, and Nick Nurse can tell them during practice, during these shoot-arounds, here's what we're going to try and do. But you got to have those reps build up over a full year to do it well. And maybe they don't need those reps build up well, because you're seeing this. And as we will get to in Tank Watch later, those guys in New Orleans, we're starting to see them. Our tank is moving through the mud right now, through the forest. And they're a little stuck down there.
Not with those tank wheels that they have there, wearing the red, white, and blue. Those are red wheels. No disrespect. That's the right wheels that you want to have for your basketball team if you're looking. Look, Brooklyn, they're failing. New Orleans, they're failing. You need these guys, with all due respect, to move through the mud, man.
And Scott mentions in the chat, too, it's not a popular opinion, but he does not see coaches throwing in the towel when they easily could. Still coaching these fringe guys up. It's pretty impressive. I'm not going to throw a victory lap for them, Scott. This is what they are paid to do, but I agree with that. I think that they are still trying to coach them up hard, but there's only so much they can do with these guys.
Especially when you look at a situation like the Sixers in this case, where we say we are not pointing the finger, Scott, to your point, at the players. It's not their fault. The coach, you're right, but the coach also has some hand in the 52 now losses that they had earlier in the season, where maybe they wouldn't be in this spot, where we'd be sitting there yelling at them for not losing the games early, but they lost them because he did have a hand in how poorly he coached at moments earlier in the season, where they probably should have had more wins. Non-tanking idea, aside, where they probably should have had more wins during the regular season because of what Nurse is doing. But we've also given Nurse credit, Scott, for the job that he has done with these young players, getting them ready, having them ready to go out there on the floor. We at one point when they were losing those games with the players talked about how Doc Rivers did a really nice job in the past where he found ways to patchwork those players and find a way to compete. Patrick Beverley, Marcus Morris, Nick Batum, and they were losing to Boston by 3 points on the road, those types of things. And we didn't see that with this basketball team when those players were still out there. But now that we think we know what the direction is of the front office and the organization to try to secure this top pick and keep their top 6 protected pick, Nick Nurse seems like his shoulders are now a little relaxed now. Yeah. Maybe he has some security that he understands that his job is maybe safe because it's not all his fault due to the injuries that he's had this season. And he's just going out there and coaching these players and getting them ready with lack of practice, new guys coming in every other week because they're signing 10-day players. And with that, he's still getting them ready to go. They compete. They're in it. They go down 20. They cut it to 8. Then they eventually, because talent is just too much, they go back down by 21, and then eventually the game is over. But that's why we continue to stress that it's not the players' fault. And in a sense, it's not Nurse's fault because he is out there giving his all and coaching these young players. But one more thing, as I said just a moment ago, and Rich was speaking about the players and what the direction of it is right now, let's be clear now. The Sixers have understood what the assignment is for a while. We were calling for it a little bit earlier, but they definitely have understood what the assignment is supposed to be right now. They don't get an A+ because they waited a little bit too long. That said, they might get an A- because they did eventually see what needed to be done for what this season was and the direction that they had, the path that they needed to take.
I think your first point was perfect. I was much more frustrated with Nick Nurse earlier in the year, in the middle of the year, when he had the available talent. I get it. Their perimeter defense is terrible right now, but this goes beyond him. I thought Brett Brown was a pretty good coach. I know some people might disagree as well. They did terrible offenses, those teams as well. So yeah, it's just I don't really blame Nurse for what we've seen over this last little bit, but yes, their defense is terrible. Let's talk about one guy who did have some decent moments of defense tonight. Not a million, because he is a part of the 5-man unit that is getting lit up, and that is our friend Adem Bona. Very active. Very active. The thing that I was most impressed with him tonight, and really most impressed with him all year, is just the activity level. Like, he just goes and gets it. And, there are plays where I think it was Jameson Battle was taking a pick and pop 3, and he's jumping from the free throw line trying to block it. But there are other times where, RJ Barrett is catching the ball and he thinks he has an easy layup off a cut, and Bona is jumping from the other side of the paint to get that block. Anyway, I just enjoy that kid, because that kid, he plays hard the entire game. Like you said earlier in the game, like, his hands are a little bit hit or miss, where there were a couple plays where it felt like he missed a couple of gettable rebounds that were in his area. But he also, and there are times where he drops the ball as well when you throw him a pass. That said, he made some nice finishes tonight as well, too. So that is a little bit hit or miss, but I've enjoyed the Bona screen and roll development. I thought in the middle of the year, his timing with Maxey got much, much better, like knowing the angle of the screen, knowing when to roll. And we've seen some of that with Jared Butler in recent games as well, where you think like, okay, this kid has a shot, and maybe he steps up to the role of backup center next year, where, you're not asking him to do all that much. You're asking him to play 10 to 15 minutes a game, play hard, set good screens, take advantage, get up off the floor quickly like you've been doing on both ends of the floor. But, pretty good game for him tonight, on a night where the guy we've been leading off with, Justin Edwards, struggled, which, again, I'm not that worried about. He was bound to have a pretty rough game.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. So, listen, we got some super chats. We'll get to those. We'll talk about, once again, the game in general. We'll give you the play of the game, temperature check from Ace Hardware, check in with the fellas from the arena, and we'll do a tank watch, a tankathon spin, and a prospect watch as well with the college basketball players. Final Four is now cemented for next weekend. We'll
Talk
do it
about
all.
the Dukies.
Yes, we will when we get back right here. A Dookie tonight from the 76ers, 127-108 as they fall to the Toronto Raptors. Now, a full 5 games back of the Raptors, 1 game back of the Brooklyn Nets, which is very important. And the New Orleans Pelicans, who we'll talk about a little bit later, they're giving us something to pay attention to as the Sixers move away from the Raptors and focus on now the Nets and the Pelicans at this moment. Sixers, yes, 1 full game back of the Brooklyn Nets. We'll talk about it all when we get back from this performance right here on the PHLY Sixers podcast presented by Bet365. Weather is improving, everybody, and as it improves, a little bit of rain upcoming. But if you want to get out, you want to have a good time, and you want to go to a really good place and enjoy yourselves, and I would say and recommend, let's go to Parks Casino. Huh? Yes, Parks Casino, the great place to be, the online casino, as well as you can get involved if you don't want to because of the rain. Get in the car and drive there. How about the online casino? Another thing that you love about Parks Casino is the Bet Parks app. All the games that we love to play in person at Parks Casino, like pop culture slots, roulette, cards, dice games, and more, can also be played on the Bet Parks app. Parks Online Casino has the games you love, whether you're at home or on the go. It's very easy for you to do. Again, you're dealing with the rain. Maybe you get a little lunch break and you're like, you know what? I'm sick of my job. Let me play a little bit of money here on my Parks Casino app so I can get out of here. Bam! Right here at Parks Casino. Here's what you have to do. Download the Bet Parks app and create an account today to receive an offer you can't pass up. New users are eligible to receive up to $1,000 back if you are down in the first 24 hours after signing up. Bet Parks Online Casino is available to Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, and Michigan residents as well. Terms and conditions do apply. Don't forget about the Excite Center. If you do make that your casino of choice and wouldn't mind traveling very, very easily, taking the street road exit off of I-95 and the PA Turnpike to get to the casino. No worries. Once you get there, it's very relaxing, very cool. Parks Casino, this is how you win. Must be 21 and over. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Golden Nugget Jewelers. For the past 30 years, our friends at Golden Nugget have operated out of the very same location in the heart of Philadelphia. I'll let you know what that is. That's 8th and Chestnut, by the way. So, customers from across Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and even people from Baltimore and New York City have come to Golden Nugget Jewelers to find that perfect engagement ring or wedding band. And their staff is highly trained and dedicated to providing a personalized shopping experience. So, if you're looking for, any piece of jewelry, but also if you're getting engaged, I think Golden Nugget Jewelers is the place you gotta go. They have a vast selection of engagement rings and wedding bands, but also, like I said, they got high-end watches. They have fashion jewelry and sparkling diamond necklaces, bracelets, earrings, and more. And when you go, you can receive a final cleaning and written appraisal with every engagement ring purchase. Golden Nugget Jewelers has been a family-owned and operated business since 1987, right there on Chestnut and A Street in Center City, Philadelphia. You deserve an expert and the best price, so go to Golden Nugget Jewelers where Philly gets engaged. Visit goldennuggetjewelry.com to learn more today.
Welcome back to the PHLY Sixers Postgame Show presented by Bet365. Second night of a back-to-back for the 76ers. They lose to the Toronto Raptors 127-109. Now 8 losses in a row for your basketball team.
So as Jess says in the chat, I'm sorry, Devon, for cutting you off there. On the plus side, we got our 5-piece nuggets tonight, and it really has, thank God they have that promo where they give away those nuggets, because that gets the biggest pop every single night from the crowd. The television broadcast, they cut to multiple sets of kids just losing their mind. Sometimes it's not even kids, honestly. Sometimes it's like grown men going crazy for those free nuggets. And that's really all they got to cheer about.
Listen, if you go back to the Washington episode that we all had, Rich, Bree, myself, we were here on that Wednesday. If you saw me late in the show texting on my phone, I was texting my daughter saying, hey, go on your app and secure your 12-piece because Washington, they are the chicken nugget champs for the way that they shot those free throws on that Wednesday night. So you're right, Purple Heart, that yes, get those nuggets, you get the 5-piece.
So it's been a few years of different fast food promos for missed free throws for the Sixers and their fans down there.
Yeah, because a couple of years ago, it wasn't the nuggets, right? It was something else.
This is the Frosty.
It was the Frosty, yes, the Frosty freeze out.
Well, and do you remember the highlight was Isaiah Thomas? And so Isaiah Thomas was playing for the Wizards after his run with the Celtics. And I am not apologizing for the fan because I think the fan was probably out of line. He was cursing at him. I think he might have flipped him the bird too. Mm-hmm. So Isaiah Thomas, though, it was kind of crazy because you know how obviously when we were down there, you would sit behind the basket in the media seating in one of them. And Isaiah Thomas actually like walked up the aisle next to us. And I remember it was like late in the fourth quarter. I was kind of looking down, trying to figure out where, my phone was and, getting situated, getting ready to go, not paying attention to the game. I remember asking somebody next to me, I'm like, what was Isaiah Thomas doing in the crowd? That's probably not a good thing. And he talked about it after the game. And he said that the fan just said, I'm sorry, I just wanted a Frosty. That's not to excuse that guy's behavior, but the Isaiah Thomas line reading of that was hilarious.
That was hilarious. So, yes, we got the Nuggets. Frosty Freeze Out used to be really fun, and now they keep changing all the Frosty flavors. So, yeah.
What's up with that? I mean,
by the way, I used to do this on the radio. Chocolate or vanilla?
Oh, Frosty?
Yeah.
I'm a chocolate Frosty.
I'm a vanilla.
Okay.
Yeah. Me and Pat Gallen and a bunch of news media guys, Marshall Harris, we would get into Twitter beefs about the
Frosty
Danny Palmel's, all that. So we would get, because of the Frosty flavor, which one is the best. I'm not a chocolate ice cream guy. I'm a vanilla. And I was like, yeah, vanilla's the best. And then we would just go back and forth and yell at each other about it on Twitter and start a war.
I'm curious what people in the chat think about this too. Let's take it to another fast food joint. McDonald's, you do the McFlurry?
Mm-hmm.
What flavor?
I do, because everybody else does it, the Oreo flavor.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I think that's the main one. I honestly
I was actually disappointed because when they changed and only locked in on 2, which were the M&M and the Oreo.
Yeah.
I used to always get the Reese's.
Oh,
that's
Reese's.
my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, the problem with McDonald's and the McFlurries is that the machines are always broken, especially us. We're working late at night. Yes. I used to try and stop sometimes at the McDonald's on Oregon Ave going home after the game is over.
Always broken.
And you want a McFlurry. It never worked.
Always broken.
Never worked.
If there's one thing they say, all right, you're going to get death taxes, and the machine is not going to work at McDonald's. By the way, send them in. Send them in if you want to send something in. We will eat them on camera if you want to become a sponsor. Whatever. We'll say their slogan. And AA Ron is correct. Vanilla is the right choice. All right, let's go. Let's go to the temperature check tonight for the Ace Hardware temperature check, where we talk about who's heating up, cooling off with our Ace Hardware temperature check. Visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your very next project. I wanted to go this route because the Final Four is set.
Mm-hmm.
All number 1 seeds heating up. You don't get that often. And I remember I was on with Anthony during last week when the tournament was underway. Jamie Lynch, our great partner, of course, here at PHLY, and both of them were talking about how, at least the first weekend, it wasn't March Madness-like. It wasn't, the upsets weren't there and things of that nature. And with it, you got all number 1s advancing to the Final Four, man. So your 1 through 4 seeds of your AP, the ranking and what they did going into the tournament, got all number 1. So heating up, all the number 1 seeds. And for those who may not have seen it, it will be Auburn taking on Florida and Duke battling Houston for the Final Four championship, for the Final Four and eventually the national championship, which will be a week, 8 days from tomorrow.
I think statistically, too, throughout this season, these 4 number 1 seeds have been particularly dominant teams. And look, I mean, most number 1 seeds are dominant teams by definition.
Mm-hmm.
but these have been completely dominant. So to get all of them, yeah, you're right, man. That's going to be a fun Final Four. And I've always felt that way about the tourney. I love the upsets in the first week, but sometimes that can mean that the second week is not as much fun because you get the Cinderella who squeaks through 2 games and then they get their doors blown off by 25 points in the regional final. So hopefully we get some good games. A lot of really good players on those teams. I was watching a little bit of the Houston game today. Kelvin Sampson, man, he's a great coach.
Yes, he is.
Underrated, huh?
Yes, he is. Also give credit to Bruce Pearl. Remember the Tennessee run that he had early on? And I actually thought Tennessee was going to knock off Auburn and get to the Final Four.
Yeah.
And they did not. They underperformed in this game. By the way, I mean, Tennessee, was it Tennessee? Tennessee, Auburn? Let me see. Tennessee, Michigan.
Bruce Pearl was made for the NIL era, by the way.
Yes, he was. Tennessee, Houston. I'm sorry. I thought they were going to knock off Houston.
Yeah.
Houston couldn't miss.
No, they were hot from 3 again, and that's Kelvin Sampson, right? He's always making deep turning runs. Be nice to see him win one of those because I think it's an underrated job he's done at a place like Houston, which is, obviously they had that great run in the 80s with PHLY Slamma, but not a historical blue blood basketball power.
And they have been recently.
My favorite Bruce Pearl story. So I had a friend who coached, let's just say at a local college, maybe community college or whatever. And he was walking around. This was during the era of, recruiting violations and, you actually had to hand out scholarships and I don't know, maybe they were paying people under the table, but I'm not even going to get into that. But you were only allowed to recruit players at certain points of the year. Mm-hmm. And I remember my friend was like, what is Bruce Pearl doing on here? You're not even close to being allowed to be on campus right now. And he was in the Philly area, so he did not care much for the rules. But now that it is the very much the Wild West, and the players are being fairly compensated, which is a good thing, by the way. I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
No question. So once again, our heating up, cooling off temperature check from Ace Hardware, we give it to the 4 number ones advancing to the Final Four. And we'll talk about those players that we have focused on the Tank Watch a little bit, huh?
Why don't we get into it with the Prospect Watch?
Want to do the Prospect Watch now? All right. Well, let me just read the final part, of course, and say thank you to Ace Hardware. Visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project. Final Four. We talked a little bit about the Duke guys just last night. We did. And today, we only had one, Kyle's guy, Jace Richardson. Not that we don't like him, but Kyle was on it from the very beginning. He was the one that actually showed up today.
Kyle's guy.
Yes, he was the one that actually showed up today for Michigan State and Tom Izzo's squad. But unfortunately, again, they lost
to a better team.
70-64. But Jace did have Kohler. I think it's Kohler actually finished with 17 for them. Richardson had 11. But when they were really trying to keep up with them early, Richardson was the only one that you could really look to and count on. Akins had 15, but Richardson 4 for 13, 6 for 17 for Jaden Akins, the senior. And it just wasn't enough because they didn't get enough help. Jeremiah's brother, is playing for Michigan State. I said I couldn't remember what team he played for, but he starts for Michigan State. He only had 2 points, but he did have 5 assists, but 17 and 11 for Kohler. But Jace Richardson, I think he comported himself pretty well in the tournament.
Yeah, because I didn't think that Michigan State team was overly talented.
Neither did I.
Either. I think that was both a nice job by Richardson. He made some big buckets down the stretch. And again, give their role guys some credit for stepping up. Also, a very nice coaching job by Tom Izzo as well. Mm-hmm. One of my favorites, even though sometimes he gets a little intense. But that's okay.
A little bit.
A little old school in that way. So I guess that mainly leaves the Duke guys in the Final Four for us in terms of prospect watching. And, of course, we have Cooper, who we talk about pretty much every single episode. But Kon Knippel and Kaman Malawak.
Yeah.
I think those guys, when you look at mock drafts, both of those other guys are in play for the 6th pick, I would say. Not to say that the Sixers will take them, not to say that they won't move up or probably move back a little bit at that point. But when you're looking at a bunch of mock drafts, I see those 2 players 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, a couple of them are a little lower, and it's a little more eye of the beholder there. What do you think of Knippel? I know we talked about him a little bit, and I was talking about his body a little bit yesterday, but what do you think about his game?
Well, we talked a little bit about it where he looks a little bit too slow at times, and while in college basketball he can get away with it, especially with a loaded team, most likely when you're drafting in the lottery, you go to a team that has some talent, but not loaded, where your issues, especially when we talk about a player like Ace Bailey or even Justin Edwards, being able to improve themselves, improve their stock and their outlook and how coaches look at them because of the space in the NBA. The spacing will help him because he can catch and shoot. But the space will also get him in trouble on the other end because
it's always a big question. How does that space affect you at the next level? Because there's more of it.
You get matched up. Forget about Tyrese Maxey. You get matched up even at 6'7" with the 6'5" Quentin Grimes. Grimes is like, cool. I'm going by this dude. And I'm probably going to get him in foul trouble because he's going to try to react and he's going to pick up a foul because he's gotten beat off the dribble a few times and it's going to get him caught. But his thing is he has really good size at 6'7", and he can shoot the hell out of the basketball. Now, I do think that when I brought up the Corey Kispert comp yesterday, and you brought up a good point that he's a little bit better with putting the ball on the floor.
He's good. He can go right and left.
So I think, and he's young.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that could be improved. And to your point, let's say he's top 10.
Yeah.
And I'll give you 5 to 10, and you tell me where is a good spot for Knipple. Understanding also where 5 and 6 are with the players that are also still available. So Sixers course at 5. Brooklyn at 6.
I don't love that as much for him. I think they're much more of a blank slate.
Toronto at 7.
That team always needs shooting. I will say. I think that's better than Brooklyn.
Okay. 8, San Antonio.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. I mean, again, they have the star player and they have
multiple star players.
They have
now.
1B as well. Too,
right.
So.
And 9, Portland.
Yeah, I mean, they look. Everybody needs shooting as a role player, so I don't mind his fit really in any of these places. I think a place like Brooklyn, a place like Washington, Washington probably won't even be in range to pick him.
Right.
But these places that are more blank slate type places, I don't like that as much. I think you go for the higher upside swing.
Chicago, Miami. Basically tied. They're tied 33 and 41.
I think the Heat could use him because he can do some stuff off the ball, and they have a lot of off ball movement as well. That actually might not be a bad move, and they also might get him in better shape as well. They have
100%.
They have a track record of doing that. Yeah, man, I really like that he can put the ball on the floor. Like if you watch him, he's super under control, can finish with his left. Has some very nice footwork in the mid-range too. Like he'll go left and spin and shoot over people. I'll be interested to see what he measures at the combine and other places as well. Because if he is closer to 6'6", 6'7",
what if he's 6'5"?
If he's 6'5", it's a little bit different, and that's the big question for him. It's like you said, how does he handle space in the NBA? And it's more like, do those moves work against NBA athletes? Because I think a lot of his game is strength and skill too. I don't want to take away the skill element, but if you're only 6'5", that only goes so far in the NBA as well. So look, I think he has a pretty high floor as a prospect because he can shoot it, he can pass it. I think the point you also made, and that's true of Malawak as well, man, that's a nice environment for them to play in college. I always talk about how college players don't have a lot of space to operate with. They often don't have any good passers on their team. No, that's a nice offensive ecosystem. And it's not just Cooper Flagg. It's Tyrese Proctor, who is a very high-level, skilled type player.
Might get himself drafted in the second round.
Absolutely, and I think he'll deserve it, and he'll probably be a decent pro as well. It's Sion, one of those two. Another guy who's just smart and an older player who knows how to move it and shoot it. So they both play in an awesome environment. I think that is worth pointing out. And they both feel a little bit different because Malawak feels like much more of a high upside swing where you don't know exactly what you're going to get. And I almost feel like Khan's floor is probably a little bit higher. But if Malawak, if he can actually shoot it, that's a pretty good player. Like that's a guy who can protect the rim and make threes. Even if that's a role player, those guys, that's why I like Porzingis is a very valuable player. That's why Serge Ibaka was a very valuable player for a long time when he was at his best, because that's a rare skill set, a guy who can really hold up at the 5 and take away the other team's best shots, but also help your best players get driving lanes and can make threes. But we don't know if he can do that yet.
Yeah, we don't know. But the one thing that seems like that's the case for him, he kind of understands who he is at this point of his career. He knows who he is. So when he comes in, you talk about a place like Toronto maybe. Yes, they do have Jakob Poeltl. You can start Poeltl, bring him off the bench, bring him along a little bit, give him some time to mature, his body to mature. And by the time that contract is up for Jakob Poeltl, or maybe they're ready to move on from him and move him a year from now because of the development that they have from Maluak, Toronto seems like a pretty decent type of spot, especially when you have a wing, 2 wings in Barrett and Barnes, and quickly signed up for an extended period of time. Grady Dick is also on the roster as well. They could use a young big man to go along with that core group overall. Knipple, let's see how this Final Four continues to play out, because I want to see a little bit more from him before I move him up into the top 6. But he's certainly in the top 10, I think, with the way that he has played down the stretch.
Yeah, down the stretch.
I think he's put himself.
You nailed it.
Because the conference tournament, not so great. Once they got to the NCAA tournament, he has played.
He's a good final game though when Flag was hurt.
Yes, he did,
which was a good one.
Yes,
too.
he did.
Yeah, I think he's definitely helped himself over this last month,
Sure.
which is, in fairness, that's when more people are paying attention. And as much as NBA evaluators, they use the full season, they check background, they do all this different stuff. I do think a hot run in March Madness does all.
Sometimes
help.
you overreact, but sometimes you react the right way to what you see, because you're trying to project out who that player is. I saw Vinny was in our chat, Vince Pellegrini, our GM here, and Vince was just talking in general. So we're not going to pull up Vince. It was just bringing up Vince because I saw him in there when we think about Maluak, because he doesn't have the offensive game as of yet. And it makes you think, or makes me think of a player like Walker Kessler, where he knows his role. The offensive game isn't necessarily there still, but he's a more than serviceable guy that you would feel comfortable if you have the right pieces around him at the 5 position.
Defensively.
Defensively.
Yes. Walker
yes.
Kessler can be a very good rim protector, but the hope with Maluak is, and again, right now he's mainly just doing the Walker Kessler stuff where, he's shooting 6 of 7 from the field every night because he's getting a lot of dunks. He's getting a lot of alley-oops.
Getting 2 lobs a game.
Yeah, and Cooper Flag and Knipple are getting downhill, and they're throwing him some excellent plays. The thing that I'm worried about with him, it's just like, what is the upside? As much as he feels like an upsidey player, the reason that Joel Embiid and Jokic ahead of him as well, but the reason that those two were just head and shoulders above every other center in the NBA was they could be like a 1A. They could like initiate offense. And I don't really see that in his game moving forward. I could be wrong, right? Joel, I think showed more offensively in his year at Kansas in terms of like low post play. I don't think we knew that he was going to be this good of a ball handler. The question for me though is, okay, Walker Kessler, that's fine, and that's a starting level center. That's a good defensive player. He's got to be able to shoot the ball though. He's got to be adding more to the offense than just vertical spacing. He needs to be able to shoot it from the outside. He's a good free throw shooter. He shoots like 76% from the free throw line, and you're right. He's not being asked to do more than that. But that's the only way I'm drafting a center at that point. I gotta be convinced that there's some real offensive upside in his game, and there might be, because you're right. All they need him to do is catch lobs and protect the rim on the other side.
So as soon as I opened up and I looked at the list of teams, I used him as an example, Walker Kessler. But now I look at, as soon as this one popped up, was the Atlanta Hawks. First thing I think of is the Clint Capella Okongwu duo, and Okongwu coming out of USC was not an offensive player. He's a defensive player. Catch lobs, he's still not. But man, when he has it going, he has the jump hook, he has the baby hook, he can do those things. But man, he can impact the game, and he understands how to play. He gave, for a young player, he gave Joel some fits from some times that they would be on the floor. He's one young player that had some success because of his motor. He's always working. That motor is always churning. And he would give Joel some fits, and he would give others some fits. And this is why they gave him the extension. And it's probably why they're going to move on from Clint Capella this offseason, when they've been trying to move off of him from the past 2 seasons because of the development of who Okongwu is and the type of player. Do you see something in there? Because, again, marginal offensive player, he's hitting threes now. This is like year 4 for him at this point, and he's developed into a decent starting center on a basketball team that is going to be a playoff team.
He's good, but the thing is, and I think you're making this point of why I'm probably less inclined to take Maluak, even though I really like his game, is that I think there's a lot of serviceable centers in the NBA.
Exactly.
You mentioned a team like Atlanta, who we talked about on our pregame show is not like they have good young talent.
Yeah.
They're a fun team to watch. I don't think anybody would mistake them with like the Kevin Durant, James Harden, Russell Westbrook Thunder. They have 2 starting centers, right? And they've had him for a long time in Okongwu and Capella as well. So you have to be convinced that he is more special than that, Malawak. Because, as we talked about in the first segment, Bona, I think, is a serviceable backup center over the next few years as well. You can get these players a little later in the draft. Now, I will say, like somebody like Malawak, he is much longer than, I think he has a chance to be an excellent rim protector. Yeah. But the other thing I would say, too, is that defensively, that Duke team is also in a great ecosystem where it's like, I think Malawak is making a huge difference in sealing off the rim. What they did to Alabama in that game yesterday, because Alabama, that's a very good college offensive team, and they really struggled both to make threes, but they did not shoot well around the rim either. The other thing, though, is like how much credit do you give Malawak? How much credit do you give Flag? Because he's all over the place.
And you bring up the
Knipple's
ecosystem.
a solid defender at that level, too.
Can they do this outside of the ecosystem? That's the thing. Now, look, they come from a great program. Can it then carry over into what you're talking about outside of that ecosystem? Because they're not going to be going into that when they're going to be going to the Portland Trailblazers or the Toronto Raptors or something like that. Will it work out? But that's where the development and also who the player is when it all comes down to it. All right, let's take a quick break. Come back, Super Chats. We'll check in with the fellas from the arena, talk with you all again, talk about the Tank Watch and the Tankathon Spin as we hang out with you on the Sunday night. Sixers lose their 8th straight, 127-108 to the Toronto Raptors. Tonight, we're discussing it all right here on the PHLY Sixers Postgame Show presented by Bet365. And I'll continue to tell you about Bet365 because they are our team sponsor here on our show. And look, these last 2 nights on the back-to-back, I was rolling. I was like on a 3 or 4 game winning streak with that one. I've hit on one end of the 2-leg parlay and missed on another. Last night it was Quentin Grimes. Tonight, he finally had an off night. Justin Edwards did not eclipse that 2 made threes tonight. I actually don't think he made any tonight. He was 0 for 4 tonight from behind the 3-point line. But that's okay because we're able to get right back at it tomorrow as we move into some basketball conversation, but also some baseball conversation because the team, your baseball team, is coming home for the home opener. Disappointing loss today. It happens, right? We know, 4th inning. That'll get the guy, number 27. It always gets him. It got him again today, so they're 2-1 on the campaign, but they come home for their home opener for tomorrow, and that's going to be here in Philadelphia. So if you have not signed up to become one of the users, like the other 90 million users worldwide, here's what you have. Live streams of over 780,000 events a year, early payouts across the NBA and the NHL. They've also live in-game betting. They've pioneered it, so you need to really get in on it right now. And here's where you can get to it when it comes to Bet365 overall. New customers now get $150 in bonus bets when you bet 5, win or lose. Sign up, use code PHLY365, deposit 10, place a bet for 5, and you get $150 in bonus bets if your team or if your bet wins or loses. Nobody else is doing this. Bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, must be 21 plus and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
And Devon, now let's talk about our good friends at TrueMark Financial Credit Union. And look, man, it is the spring right now, and that means it is time to spring into savings. Man, some nice weather the last couple of days. Look, whatever your financial goals are, whether you're buying a house, I have a bunch of friends that are starting to do that, taking that dream vacation. Got one over here as well. That might be something that I want to do this summer. Or just like building your emergency fund, planning for anything, saving for school, whatever your financial goals might be, or your kids' financial goals, planning that moving forward. TrueMark Financial Credit Union has the perfect savings account for you. TrueMark Financial, they offer high-rate certificates and money market accounts to help your money grow faster and work harder for you, the customer. So if you're looking to get some financial planning and take care of all of that, visit TrueMark.com for rates and to learn more. TrueMark Financial, federally insured by the NCUA, an equal opportunity lender, and rates are subject to change.
Welcome back to the PHLY Sixers Postgame Show, presented by Bet365. Let's get to the player of the game because we have not talked about how good this guy was tonight. Lonnie Walker in his first start of the season for the Sixers, 23 points, 3 for 7 from beyond, 3 rebounds, and 7 assists for Lonnie Walker in his first starting role as part of the Sixers' 51st starting lineup of the year. And Rich was right. They have tied the Memphis Grizzlies for the most starting lineups in a campaign, and they have 7 games left, and they have a chance to break that record.
They're going to break it.
And I'm sure they will. But Lonnie Walker, deservingly so, player of the game tonight.
By the way, that's going to be the first talking point in the
post game or in the pregame.
No. In Daryl Morey's season-ending press conference, right?
Okay.
They're going to break that record for no other reason than for Daryl Morey to say, "Man, we got so injured. We broke the record for the most starting lineups. I mean, what could we do?"
You are 100% right, man.
Anyway, yes. So they got one more to go. Shout out to John Peace, for letting us know on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, John Peace.
I gotta imagine Bagley's going to get a couple chances in the starting lineup, and that will unlock the combinations. But yeah,
got to start Wheeler too. Come on, man.
I mean, they probably will. Good to see Lonnie bounce back. That's a guy that, even if he might not be here next year, I thought Kate did a good job talking about it on the broadcast. That's a guy for fighting. He's fighting for his NBA life. I'm sure he doesn't want to go back and play in Europe if he doesn't have to, right? No. And he's got the talent to potentially play for an NBA team. Obviously had the injury scare. So good to see him bounce back from that. A deserving player of the game tonight. But again, the Sixers team, you can't stop the tank because Lonnie Walker can have a very good offensive game. 7 assists, right? He was like actually making plays for other guys, which you don't always associate with him. But it doesn't matter because the defense is so bad.
Yep.
Doesn't matter.
Yep, absolutely. So, Lonnie Walker, congratulations. You are our player of the game. Player of the game, as always, is brought to you by Rich.
No one.
All right, let's keep it going and discuss a little bit of Tank Watch.
Oh, yeah.
It's time, man. It's time. Woo! 98-94, Jose Alvarado and the New Orleans Pelicans knocked down the Charlotte Hornets. This is like a college basketball score or back in the 90s score, 98-94, but it doesn't matter. We don't care how they got it done. They got it done, Rich. We are no longer focused on the Toronto Raptors. We are now focused on the New Orleans Pelicans and their 4-point win over the Charlotte Hornets because currently they are sitting with 21 wins, 54 losses. The Philadelphia 76ers 23-52 on the year right now. We now have some sights set on a new team, the New Orleans Pelicans.
Yes, we do. And so they're 2 games ahead.
2 games ahead
of the Sixers. If the Sixers were to catch them, it's not like playoff tiebreakers. Like I kind of wish it was because the Pelicans beat the Sixers twice. So I assume they would jump ahead of them.
Yes,
but no, that gets settled by a coin flip at the end of the year, I believe is how that works. Again, we had to look this up over the past few days. Can they lose 2 more games? They have a game against Brooklyn at some point, which the good news is somebody's got to win that one.
Somebody's got to win, man.
Somebody's got to win that one. And, they have some tough games down the stretch, but you also wonder, when they play OKC on the last day of the year, I don't know. Is OKC going to be going all out? OKC's probably the wrong example now that I think of it. They're just too deep.
Miami maybe because they'll be maybe locked into that 10th spot. They can't move. It's whatever it is. But the Brooklyn game is important because, number one, it's the Sixers, Brooklyn, and New Orleans. That's in 4 games, man. So it's still going to be relatively important where we don't know where Brooklyn will be at that point, and we don't know where New Orleans will be at that point. And who will win over the next course of those next few games, where the Sixers will be. They have New York coming up on Tuesday. That's the 7:30 game for the 76ers. I don't remember who else is after that, but the Washington game might be one of them somewhere in there. So the Sixers, we think, maybe could win that game. even on the road in Washington. It's just a matter of what happens between Brooklyn and New Orleans. Either way, it's probably going to be something where you either get a 3-way tie, a 2-way tie by somebody, or you miss out by one game behind Team X at that point.
Yeah, I will say.
Because they have both LA games in Los Angeles. They're going to lose those. We think.
Those are losses.
Milwaukee, right now, they're floundering, a little bit.
Maybe we shut down Giannis for that night.
Give him a little rest because they have Milwaukee twice. So they have Milwaukee at home. Then it's at Brooklyn, Milwaukee at home. At Milwaukee, second night of a back-to-back, Miami, and then OKC. Both of those games will be at home. They're going to win one of these games. So it's just a matter of, will the Sixers win? Will they win two?
I think the Sixers probably are going to have to lose out when I look at that schedule to be tied with them. So here's the thing, though, everybody. If the Sixers were able to catch them, if they were able to pass them, or the opposite way, whichever way you want to look at it, or let's say they tie and the Sixers win the coin flip, getting the 4th slot would be huge for the Sixers because they would go in the lottery night with Devon. I am counting this up right now, and they would only have an 18.9% chance of losing the pick.
Which is important. Huge.
That's it. The only way is if they drop to 7 and 8, it would be much, much harder. So no, it wouldn't be a guarantee, but considering where they were a few weeks ago, I'd feel much better about that.
And here's Brooklyn's schedule the rest of the way, all right? At Dallas on Monday, that's tomorrow. Minnesota home. Toronto Sunday home.
Somebody's got to win that one too.
Next game, home. New Orleans. Then they're home for Atlanta, at Minnesota, home for New York. You mentioned teams that maybe already have things locked up, like Minnesota, New York, for those final 2 games. Maybe things work out in the Sixers' favor in that way, and we'll be looking at some. The way the NBA goes in the theater of it, it's going to come down to the final 2 games.
I think that's right.
Yeah, it's going to come down to the final 2 games. I think that's right.
So
that's our Tank Watch tonight. We appreciate everybody for hanging in as we update you every show and every post-game show as well on what's going on around the Sixers with the keeping the top 6 protected overall pick. Let's get to some of these super chats because we have a few. We want to check in with the fellas from the arena at some point as well. Davon, a.k.a. Schoolboy Beats. Yeah, right. Nurse safe. Taylor Jenkins, welcome. Well, we
didn't say he was safe, and I don't think he should necessarily be safe. We're saying that I'm not blaming him for these last 20 games.
Yeah.
That's all.
And we also talked about how it's more likely if somebody leaves, they both leave versus one president of basketball ops coach staying and, all that stuff. So there's that. Thank you, Davon. Appreciate it as always. Riaz, would you want to see an enforcer on the Sixers next year like Isaiah Stewart from the Pistons? I think it would be a good to see that on this team next year. Last year, Riaz, I know you've been a part of our show for a while, but especially in the offseason, and Rich and Bree and certainly the guys can tell you, I'm a big Isaiah Stewart guy, and I've been wanting to acquire him for a while now just because decent power forward, can play the 5. He's more in a backup role, of course, now at this stage of his career because of the talent that they've amassed on that team.
Mainly been playing backup 5.
Yeah, so which
he's good at.
Yeah, he's really good at it. And the fact that he will fight somebody, and I'm all for an occasional dust up to get some juice going for your team. If you haven't seen the one tonight, Rich showed it to me and Bree, where the Pistons and the Wolves got into a nice little scuffle because Ron Holland fouled Naz Reid. He didn't like it. Dante stepped in and stepped to Holland and gripped him up. And then Isaiah Stewart, who already had a little problem with Dante from some plays before, they get into it. It was some good video. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. I like Isaiah Stewart, but I think he fits with what they like now, and I kind of think he might not be going anywhere anytime soon with Jalen Duren being their starting center and him being the backup.
They got to love it with the bad boy tie-in. It feels like
he walked off the court and he was showing it. He's like, Detroit. He was going like this. It's like, 2.0 is happening.
It feels like he could have played for one of those older teams. So the one thing I would say, Riaz, is that I love toughness. I love people who can step in and stand up for themselves and for their teammates, people who don't take no you-know-what. But we talked about this a little bit a couple off seasons ago, not on this show, but just general Sixers fan base. When they signed PJ Tucker, a lot of the that was what a lot of the talk was, right? This guy's a dog, right? He's tough. He's somebody who can do that. I thought PJ Tucker was still very tough in terms of, setting a message and sometimes maybe even going a little bit over the top when he was screaming at Paul Reed the one time. By the way, speaking of that, I'm going off topic. Doc, after that game, was like, yeah, I mean, like, they won that game. It was game 1 in Boston. And Doc was like, yeah, I got to be honest. Like, he was probably going a little bit too far there. It's like,
settle down, man.
Anyway, the problem with PJ Tucker was he wasn't PJ Tucker the player anymore. So you need to have somebody who is as good as Isaiah Stewart is now. A younger type player, because I love that extra intangible of toughness, but you also got to be able to fill your role. And Isaiah Stewart, as a backup center, is doing that better for the Detroit Pistons than PJ Tucker was doing that for the Sixers very late in his career, by the way.
So I was in favor of when they made the Clippers trade, and it was unfortunate they lost James Harden, but they brought in multiple wings, multiple players overall. And I was happy that Marcus Morris was coming in as part of that because, to your point, it's a role player. But, he has a reputation in the league where he's going to stand up for his teammates. It was why, quite frankly, a lot of people, yes, Mike Scott hit a lot of threes, but he also will walk up to somebody and scare the hell out of you.
Mike Scott was a good example of that.
Yeah, so yes, I'm in favor of it, but I don't think that's the guy that you're going to acquire. It may have to come from somewhere else. How about it just simply comes from winning basketball games and just being tough and not shrinking in the moment of whatever it is. So we appreciate the question, though, Riaz. Good stuff. Scott Sotan, always good to check in with Scott here. And by the way, no, real fast, Davon, I'm sorry, Bree. Davon says the city needs a Mars twin. Reggie Evans, Kenyon Martin.
Well, they
had one. They had two. They had Reggie Evans. And they had the junior of Kmart. So there you go.
They really had everybody.
They had all. They
had
them.
A Morris twin. They had actual Reggie Evans, and they had Kmart Jr.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Reggie Evans was funny because he was like an insanely good offensive rebounder.
Yes, he was.
He was a terrible defensive.
Couldn't jump.
It was very weird. Yeah.
Yeah, couldn't jump. Scott Sotan, Embiid and the Sixers looking at options. Team is mute. Can't imagine any doctor offering any hope in his retirement with some financial settlement an option.
Scott, we don't know.
Yeah, we have no clue. So that's an easy one to say. We have no clue, man. No clue.
We don't know.
We just have to wait for them to give updates and see how he plays on the floor and how many games he plays next season.
I agree with team is mute, and I agree with the idea that a doctor might not be able to offer hope. I don't know that, but we don't know.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to Skunk Riley here. Look at this one. Skipple Knipple.
Ooh.
Forget Queen. He gives me Jahlil Okafor vibes. Edgecombe is nothing. They need to get one of the...
I'm assuming that's Rutgers players.
Rutgers players, yes. And I saw somebody in there yesterday talking about how you need to stay away from the Rutgers players. So this is going to be a fun month as we get ready for the lottery and then the month following of getting ready for them to keep the pick and talk about where they need to go in terms of a selection. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. Our guy Skunk taking a sledgehammer to the entire lottery.
Yeah. Forget Queen, skip Knipple, Edgecombe, no. Get one of those two guys from up in Jersey.
All right. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not mad if they get one of those two guys. That means they landed in the top 3. So go for it. We appreciate it, Skunk. Thank you so much for that. That being said, we also want to make sure that we tell everybody that we're about to go into a little bit of a OT, overtime, here on the show. So if you're watching on television on the fast channels, join us. Watch the rest of the show at allphly.com. While you're there, sign up to become a diehard member. You get a free T-shirt when you do sign up. Look, we're both repping the T-shirts right here. Look at it. It makes me always think about the Seinfeld episode where the Christmas card, Elaine, and Jerry and Kramer are like, look, we have them too. But yes, get the gear, free T-shirt, diehard member, PHLY, allphly.com. Become a diehard member. Great written content like the recap tonight from Kyle, the daily newsletter from the man to my left, Derek with his insightful pieces as well. And as baseball is underway, Jim Salisbury, hockey with Charlie as they are tanking, and the Eagles in free agency in the upcoming draft with everybody on the team at PHLY Eagles. Appreciate it. All right. Let's get to the daily Tankathon spin. And check in on, now that we know where we are today at the moment, of what it looks like. Yesterday, you got the 2nd overall pick? No, you got the 6th overall pick.
No, but that was a good illustration of that. Since the Sixers have moved up, the worst case scenario, you got a little more breathing room.
Odds are improving.
Yeah.
Yes.
If only one team jumps you, that's okay. You can get knocked down a spot.
Yes.
And still keep your pick.
Correct. Who do we have? Let's do it. Bree, drum roll, please. Whoa, number 3.
Ace Bailey. Hello.
Ace Bailey. We keep speaking it into existence as we talk ourselves into it. Ace Bailey, you are a Philadelphia 76er. Welcome. You don't have to go very far. Where is he from? Isn't he from like New Orleans or something?
He's from Georgia.
Georgia, Atlanta. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. All right. Well, number 3 overall pick, courtesy of the Daily Tankathon spin. With that, let's head to the arena, because he saw the Daily Tankathon happening live in South Philadelphia, skipped last night's, thought this one was going to be better, which it was, because lost last night and the Sixers move up. Therefore, Kyle, when Rich does the Daily Tankathon spin, they get the 3rd overall pick here tonight because the odds are better.
See, this is why we need Rich on the spins and not Derek. Derek has had a few too many losing the pick spins on the show. I don't know if he can be trusted or not. So
we can always get him on video at the end of each show. Yeah.
I've been pretty good. I think I'm like 5 out of 7 or something like that. I'm doing pretty good.
I'll take those odds.
Well, what was this one like tonight? What was Nick Nurse discussing tonight post game? Because after they were officially eliminated last night and the video was put up there, and Derek joined us last night, he talked about how the injuries and so on and so forth. But they're eliminated now, so there's a different kind of coach speak of what needs to be said when you have 8 games left. You're running out 9 players that 7 of them may not even be on the team next season. What did Nick Nurse have to say after this one tonight?
Well, Devon, I honestly think some of what he said pregame is probably just as illuminating as the postgame talk, because he got asked about Jeff Doughton's situation where he only has 2 more available days left. And someone, I think, asked him something to the effect of, like, how many discussions have there been about this? Or like, how aware have you been of this? And he goes, oh, believe me, I am aware. There have been a lot of discussions about this. And it's a funny moment, but then you think about it for 2 seconds and you're like, man, they're having serious conversations about running out of 2-way days for Jeff Doughton in March, right? Like, that is not something that we would have anticipated being a major storyline or thing to think about in March. So I think like the broader point and the broader conversations that Nick is having at this point are just, you want to see the young guys trying some things, right? Like if it's, Adem Bona trying something offensively that he hasn't done, or one of these guards or wings picking up a tough defensive assignment and locking in for 5-10 minutes. I know he referenced previously, not tonight, but maybe guys on his coaching staff drawing up some stuff in the huddle, or taking on a more active role that are maybe not as active or not front of bench guys typically. So it's they are fully treating this as kind of a learning period for the team, for the organization, and as that happens, they just continue to lose and march closer to the goal that I know we're all discussing on this show.
Kyle, I was talking to Devon in the earlier segment about how just this defense is just driving the tank. The Sixers they're giving up 42% 3-point shooting over their last 10 games, and some of that I'm sure is that these teams are shooting over their heads, but they're also wide open, and this team's defense. Okay, on a positive note, though, a guy who did defend on some of the possessions tonight that you mentioned, Adem Bona. I thought a lot of nights we talk about Justin Edwards. He's been the guy who we've tried to take something positive out of the game from. It wasn't him tonight. He struggled. That's okay. He wasn't going to continue to play quite that well every night. But I thought Bona was active. 5 blocks. Caught a couple of passes, got some dunks. So a decent night for him.
Yeah, and 5 blocks, and his first foul in that game did not come until the third quarter. And so I think what we're starting to see from him as he's gotten more time on the floor, and he told us tonight, he was at the podium right before I joined you guys. What he said is a lot of what has helped him is just film review, like the ability to go back after every game, look at what happened, talk it over with coaches, and just dissect it in that way, applying himself to be dedicated to doing the film study, and then working hard to either correct those mistakes, work on a piece of his game that he needs to, and turning that into something actionable. And I think you're seeing the results, right? Like, I don't think, to my eye, I don't think he looks less active, right? Like, we still see a guy all around the boards chasing these block attempts. He's light on his feet. He's running the floor. And sure, there are some car crash moments, right, where he's just this big athletic dude who's going to fly into somebody. But I think by and large, he has learned to play just a little bit slower, let the game come to him, and trust that, like, he is athletic and long enough that if he hesitates for a quarter of a second, he's still going to be able to go up there, get a rebound, get a block, whatever it is. And then I think there's some, mechanical development and some just basic skill development that we've talked about on this show. But I talked to him and I talked to Nurse tonight about, he's now 70% from the line for the season after tonight, 4 or 4 from the line. And while he was, I think, around that level at UCLA in his second year, his freshman season there, it was a real issue. And that was, I think, one of the concerns is like, well, will this guy be a reliable free throw shooter or just shooter in general, with the free throw line normally being the good barometer? Well, if this is any indicator, maybe he'll be able to extend out a little bit, right? Like, I think we're a long way from Adem Bona 3-point shooter, stretch big Adem Bona. But as Derek tries to use his camera stand as a lightsaber at me as I'm doing my hit, I just think that that's a sign of some meaningful progress, and something that if he does get the keys next year as like the full-time backup and a real rotation guy, that's an important thing to know, that like, hey, this guy isn't a potential hacking threat. He's at least a respectable free throw shooter.
And looking at the point guard spot, when we were discussing the 3 guards that most likely will be in your rotation, Maxey, McCain, and Grimes, and we even talked a little bit about it last night, just of having a backup point guard that may not play every night the primary minutes, but play some minutes on any given night from the head coach. And that's Jared Butler, where he had 10 assists the other night for a double-double. He's scoring the basketball. He's not turning the rock over as much. He has 6 assists tonight to go along with 15 points with only 2 turnovers. But just playing a better overall, under control, running the offense, especially with teammates he hardly even knows, Kyle, at this stage of the season, and what he's been able to do. What have you seen from the last few games where we've seen these numbers improve and overall consistent play, even when Jeff Doughton is not able to play?
Well, I'll tell you what, there was another guy who had a similar game tonight, and that's Lonnie Walker. And Lonnie Walker had a better scoring game, but I believe Lonnie had something like 7 assists and 2 turnovers. So like, both those guys are giving you, I think, what you would want in terms of a reserve guard. And I think it comes down to, I think Butler, to your point, Devon, he's just a more natural pick and roll playmaker, right? Like, I think Lonnie is the more dynamic ball handler / scorer, and is a little bit bigger. And so that potentially gives him defensive versatility. But Butler, if you're just saying, we're going to give this guy the ball and he's going to run the offense, like, I think Butler has certainly shown he's capable of doing that. Now, we didn't get to see him a whole heck of a lot with what I would call like the real version of the Sixers. And that is kind of the shame of this extended tanking period, right? Is they have some guys now that we all would have been interested to see, hey, what does Lonnie Walker look like with the good version of this team? What does Jared Butler look like with the good version of this team, if there ever was a good version, for that matter, as Derek is laughing at me, probably rightfully so. But like, it's a shame that we're seeing some of these things, and it's still like it's so far off in the distance that any of this will matter. We'll be able to fairly evaluate it because, yeah, like Jared Butler's playing pretty well. Lonnie Walker tonight has a very good game, good game scoring the basketball, good game playmaking, and balancing those responsibilities. But like also these guys are in a pressure-free environment where they're losing every night. They lost 8 in a row, and frankly, the competition hasn't been that good. So it's good that they're getting this guard play. It's just difficult to tell if it means a whole heck of a lot for anything beyond this year, especially if they keep that pick and they decide to invest in another guard, which I guess if it's 3, Rich, that on your spin tonight could be a choose between Ace Bailey and BJ Edgecombe situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, man. Well, listen, we appreciate you joining in. We'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. for our 3 p.m. show tomorrow on Monday. Myself, Derek, Kyle will be here with you, Bree as well. Rich will join us later in the week.
Oh boy, Derek is coming in with something.
Uh-oh.
Rich, if I show you this, do you remember what this is?
Kind of. It's a niche Sixers Twitter thing, right?
Tom Moore.
Oh,
Tom Moore posted it the one night and inadvertently the exploding unicorn head and nothing else. Or no, there was a tweet attached to it, and he accidentally sent it as like a full image rather than as an emoji, and he didn't want to send the emoji in the first place.
To call that a niche Sixers thing is not doing that justice.
No. That came up tonight because we had a media brouhaha after. No, not. Sorry, wrong phrasing. No, wrong brouhaha, wrong word. It was not a. We were yucking it up a little bit, waiting for them to come out, and it was we'll call it a word guessing game that I won, by the way, in case anybody was wondering. But it took a long time to figure out what the word was. So somebody made the comment that we had not had as much fun just sitting here being ridiculous since Tom Moore's exploding head unicorn night.
Well,
anyway, fellas, get home safe. You've been on there long enough.
At 3 p.m. here on the PHLY Sixers podcast. Kyle Neubeck with a cameo from Derek Bodner's phone and his voice joining us live from the arena as well. This has been an interesting one, but look, man, 52 losses now. Is it 52? Let me just make sure.
I believe it is 52.
It is 52, 23 and 52, 29 games under 500. We knew that at the beginning of the season.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yes, we did. Listen, we'll be back tomorrow at 3 o'clock. All 3 of us with Bree, and Rich will be back later in the week as we hang out for another Sixers home game, and we talk some hoops. Of course, we have a lot to talk about tomorrow, from the standings, where they are right now, the tournament, just kind of getting up to date on a lot of things. So make sure you all tune in tomorrow at 3 p.m. right here on the PHLY Sixers podcast. Also, want to make sure that we say it's time for the world famous roll call.
Let's do it.
Yes, let's do that. First of all, we have to start off with all of the super chats from Scott, Skunk, Riaz, and Davon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
All of you. Let's start. What up, Sal? We see Sal in there liking the hat. Appreciate it. Or these hats, too, with these hats. Overall, Igavini. What up, Igavini? And Kyle Wright checking in. Money Mar. What up, Money Mar? You better love somebody. Love somebody. Love somebody. Densley Richard. Yams. Igavini. Phi Chi. Rich P. What up, Rich? Mellow 3-point. Mellow, my man. Kyle Wright. We already talked about it. Hey, Val. Good to see you as always. And Jeannie. Even though Jeannie wasn't here, it's just like we always have to say all the ladies together, right? Val, Jeannie, Nona, Purple Heart. Got all of them covered.
I like that.
Yeah, just get it. All the ladies right there. Davon, we already mentioned with the super chat. Thank you. Art, ain't me in the chat. Wasn't me either. I don't know what it is that we're referring to, but it wasn't me. It ain't me either. Who else? Nice with it in the chat as well. So we got ain't me and nice with it. I love it. Love it. Love it. Boots. What up, Boots? Better call B-Ball Paul in the chat. Saw B-Ball Paul out there as this little skirmish was going on there in Detroit. Saw B-Ball Paul out there getting some run. Exactly. Getting it out of the mud, especially helping the Sixers with the tanking, getting out of the mud. He loves to tweet stuff too. And
he does.
Love Paul Reed. Love him. Randy. We gotta say Joaquin, Yams, Noob. What up, Noob? Hookah Doncic was there earlier. We had Hinky, Babur, Scott, John Peace. What up, Peace? Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. 7 more losses in a row. We can take that. 15 in a row to close out the season. We'll take it if that means they get somebody in the top 6 there of the draft. Babajide. It's been a while since we've seen Babajide. Good to see you back, Babajide. Vic, Money Mar, Neil Deaver, X-Man. What up, X? Prophet 1, SB Cole, Remo K, Jeff Stewart, Randy Brandon, Sean C, and our GM, Vinny.
Vinny.
What up, Vin? All right, that'll do it for us. Make sure you like and subscribe. And when you do, hit the like button. And when you hit that like button, you hit the bell icon so you can get the sound to let you know that it is, in fact, showtime beginning at 3 p.m. tomorrow right here on this feed. For Derek, Kyle, Bree, and Rich, a special thank you to producer extraordinaire Bree for the great work as always. I'm Devon. We'll see you tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Our show, as always, is brought to you by Bet365. Go make some money on there and then tell us about it a little bit later. Have a good rest of your Sunday. We'll talk to you on Monday. Another busy week ahead for us as the April schedule gets underway on Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Have a good night. See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.